Good evening and welcome. You're watching India Upfront. I'm Padmaja Joshi. We're living in extremely interesting times. Today, India clearly sent out a message that it is no pushover. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau set into motion a chain of events that now threaten to take India-Canada links to their lowest point ever. 3 days after Mr. Trudeau sprung a surprise by alleging in the House of Commons that his country's intelligence agencies are pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the Government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, look at where things have now reached. After asking a Canadian diplomat to leave our country within 5 days, today, India has frozen visas for Canadian citizens. Further, the number of diplomats at the Canadian High Commission in Delhi are also likely to be reduced after Canada today said that it has decided to temporarily adjust staff presence in India. But what was the real departure today? Was India's clear and unequivocal and perhaps a rather stern message to Canada to back off from its unsubstantiated charges against the Indian government, and at the same time also calling out Canada's patronage of Khalistani and criminal elements in no uncertain terms. Today, the MEA not only called the comments of Justin Trudeau and company prejudiced, but even made it clear that his country had shared zero specific intelligence about the killing of anyone by Indian agencies, leave alone Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Second, the Indian government also reminded Canada of how it has sat on intelligence and requests from India to act against elements who have been sheltered in Canada and continue to commit crimes against India. But most significantly, the MEA called out Canada's growing reputation as a quote-unquote haven for terrorists and criminal activities.
No specific information has been shared by Canada on this case, either then or before or after. We have, as we have said, or I think we've been made very clear, we are willing to look at any specific information. We have conveyed this to the Canadian side, made it clear to them that we are willing to look at any specific information that is provided to us. But so far, we have not received any such specific information. That from our side, very specific evidence about criminal activities by individuals based on Canadian soil has been shared with the Canadian authorities on a regular basis, but not been acted upon. If there is any country, if you're talking about reputational issues and reputational damage, if there's any country that needs to look at this, I think it is Canada and its growing reputation as a place, as a safe haven for terrorists, for extremists, and for organized crime. And I think that's a country that needs to worry about it. Yes, I do think there is a degree of prejudice here, They have made the allegations, they have taken action on them. To us, it seems or it appears that these allegations by the Government of Canada are primarily politically driven. And the advisory was comprehensive. There was a term called politically condoned activities, hate crimes. You said alacrity, they didn't respond with alacrity. I would go further, say they did not take it at all. It seems there is a feeling that these are part of freedom of expression or whatever you call it, and such hate crimes are being condoned in the political environment and the political system. And certainly that is something of concern, and we have flagged it.
But here's the thing, governments like that of Trudeau can play their little games, and India is more than able to answer them in a language that they will understand. The sad byproduct of Mr. Trudeau's actions is that he has unwittingly put a target on the backs of a large number of peaceful and law-abiding Hindus and Sikhs who live in Canada. Soon after Mr. Trudeau's allegations that India was behind the assassination of Hardeep Nijjar, another Khalistani secessionist, Gurpatwant issued a warning, telling the Hindu Canadians to leave the country immediately because he says they are working against Canada's interests and the so-called right to self-determination of Sikhs. Imagine this, an unthinking, short-sighted and a posturing which has no evidence to back it whatsoever, has ended up endangering an entire community. So much so that the folly of Mr. Trudeau's actions are now being called out by leaders of his own country.
Few days back, Khalistan movement leader in Canada and president of Sikhs for Justice, which organizes the so-called referendum, Gurpatwant Singh attacked Hindu Canadians, asking us to leave Canada and go back to India. I've heard from many Hindu Canadians who are fearful after this targeted attack. I urge Hindu Canadians to stay calm but vigilant. Please report any incident of Hindu phobia to your local law enforcement agencies. The Khalistan movement leader is trying to provoke Hindu Canadians to react and divide the Hindu and Sikh communities in Canada. Let me be clear, vast majority of our Canadian Sikh brothers and sisters do not support Khalistan movement.
It's quite clear that ties are strained, but are they reason enough right now for Mr. Trudeau to end his Khalistani bromance that has been very, very evident so far? And will he finally let go of the people who he's trying to appease right now, even at the risk of antagonizing a country like India? Joining us on the show, Ritesh Malik, National Convener of the Canada-India Foundation, Patrick Brockman, author of Space and Time, Professor Vivek Dahija, expert on Canada-India relations and Professor of Economics at the Carleton University in Canada, and Preetpal Singh Baliawal, Chief Spokesperson of the Punjab Lok Congress. I want to start with you, Professor Vivek Dahija. Do you think that India-Canada ties are at a point of no return? What happens next, at least until Mr. Trudeau is in power?
Well, I think that we are at a point of no return now under Mr. Trudeau. His very reckless actions of making these unproven allegations in Parliament on Monday have sent the two countries into kind of a tailspin. And I must say that it's pretty clear that he is becoming increasingly isolated. US, UK, Australia have not given him the support that he was probably expecting, probably because what evidence he claims to have shown them did not persuade them that he had proved there's no smoking gun to prove the allegations. So he's in a real bind because having thrown the dice, as it were, having gambled by making these very strong allegations against the world's largest democracy, he hasn't proved it. And he's now, and if he backs down now, he will totally lose face. He's sinking in the polls here. The timing also was a bit interesting. He was trying to change the conversation, perhaps from his terrible poll numbers. So he's in a total bind now.
He reached out to the other members of Five Eyes, Australia, UK, US, and most of them, in fact, all of them refused to at least put out a joint statement and condemn India. Yet their statements so far have expressed concern. How do you see the statements coming, especially from the UK and US so far, Professor Dahija? Would you see it as, a platitude or a condemnation?
Absolutely. It's just normal diplomatic speak. If you say I'm concerned, it means I'm not taking it seriously. I mean, if they were backing Trudeau, they would have said we condemn India, we stand with Canada. They didn't say that. So this is normal diplomatic speak. And unfortunately, many ordinary folks don't realize that when they say I'm concerned, it's totally a platitude, means nothing.
Mr. Brockman, Indian diplomats are in danger. That is what the Ministry of External Affairs said today. Have you heard the kind of language that India used today, any time in the recent past, against any country, saying in as many words that today Canada should be more concerned about the reputation it is getting of being a safe haven, not just for terrorists, but also for criminals?
And you have to think about the fact that this guy's putting out a bounty on providing information for the home addresses for Canadian diplomats. I mean, that would never happen in any other nation other than, under somebody like Justin Trudeau. He's creating an opportunity to, further divide Canadians, pit race against race, gender against gender, and religion against religion. And that's what a weak leader does when he doesn't have anything else to stand on. And so it's very disturbing to hear about this and the effect that it'll have on Hindus in Canada, and especially diplomats. I can't think of a time in Canadian history where Canadians were as divided as they are and fearful for safety. And I think that goes, from coast to coast.
I think that is really the aspect that most people are missing. Because, Ritesh Malik, how are the Indians and the Sikhs, a large majority of the Sikh population in Canada, reacting today? Especially after the likes of Gurpatwant Singh Pannu have also jumped in.
I know, most of the people feel that, or these extreme elements try and give an impression that they represent the whole Sikh community, which is not true at all. In Canada, majority of Sikhs and Hindus are very friendly, and they are as much part of India as they were when they were living in India, right? So, I mean, there is a lot of panic, anxiety, and a lot of, fear amongst community because of the fact that, government here is kind of letting these loose elements reign in whatever they want to do. I mean, just to add to what we were talking earlier, like when these threats were issued against Indian diplomats in Canada, I mean, rather than providing security cover or RCMP cover to these diplomats, like they should have looked into who is giving these threats and reined in these elements. Rather, they just provided security cover. So what they've provided security cover to them, and also they've let them do whatever they want to do, which again is not, I mean, I haven't seen any, I've been living here for 12 years now. I have never seen anything like this. I mean, federal ministers here turn up to an event or, some event without any security or nothing. I mean, and we used to feel so proud about the fact how free this society is. And now here we see a consul general in Toronto or in Vancouver, they are faring in a bulletproof car with RCMP cover, which is weird. I mean, like, why would any country let that happen? I mean, we don't expect, Canadian diplomats to be covered with Z security or what that in India, and same is here in Canada. I mean, this is very disturbing for us as community to see things unfolding. Temples are being vandalized every day. We all see. Nobody does anything. Law enforcement does not do anything. Politicians don't do anything. They are just busy trying to woo or appease a certain section of people, which are very handful, but very vocal. And see, like, it can only happen in Canada that handful of extreme elements are dictating the relationship between two vibrant democracies, which is such a sad thing to see.
But since you stayed there for over a decade, did this happen only in the last couple of years, or did you see the seeds of this being planted ever since 1983-84?
It has been always there, but lately we've seen that happening very often, and these elements are very vocal now on the pretext of freedom of expression, freedom of speech. Things which we see here are weird. I mean, like, no country in the world will tolerate terrorism, extremism, or extreme ideologies to flourish. Citing that it's charter right of freedom. Like, that's really weird. I mean, we Canadians, Indo-Canadians, are really concerned the direction we as a country are taking under political patronage and appeasement of certain section. I mean, it's not good for our society. I mean, leave aside India. I'm saying it's not good for Canada, what we are promoting and what we are encouraging here.
But Ritesh, have you had any personal experiences? Because usually we see it directed at, say, the Indian establishment, the consulate, or, a place of worship. Or is there targeted harassment towards the Indian community per se?
I mean, there have been multiple examples. I mean, like, I personally can relate to one example where, during farmers' protest, there was in schools, some teachers in Brampton area were trying to push a narrative which was very anti-India. And, I'm not in favor or against anything taught in schools. But, we should give young children a chance to kind of do their own thinking and logic, what is right or what is wrong. I mean, there was instance where they were actually pushing for sure anti-India narrative. And, I raised a voice because my daughter complained to me that why they are teaching that India is not a good place to go. Because, our kids still relate to India because we come from India, and every summers or, in vacations, we go to India. So, like, they cannot hear that, India is a bad place because they go there every time. They don't see anything like this, what they were trying to teach at schools. And I raised this objection with school board, school and everywhere. And, I was targeted for sure, online, bullied. And there are multiple examples. Anybody, like, they always give the reference of freedom of expression. But why freedom of expression is only to a certain section of people? If I don't like anything, or if I don't feel this is right for my children, why I'm not able to say that? If we are feeling that extremism is dividing community, creating a rift between peace-loving Sikhs and Hindus, why we are not allowed to say that? The moment anybody, like, leave aside a common man like me, we've heard instances in Canada where MPPs or MPs are targeted for, pointing these extreme elements out. And this is a cause of great concern for all of us as, peace-loving Canadians. I mean, why government is letting this happen? Like, why these small fraction of people are dictating to every Canadian how they should behave, what they should think, or if they should believe in their ideology, what they are saying is right.
Stunning the kind of rubbish that gets passed off as free speech, in fact, outright hate speech, tacit and not so tacit threats. And Preetpal Singh Baliawal, because you belong to Captain Amrinder Singh's party, he was one of the first non-BJP. In fact, he took a bipartisan stand when the last time Mr. Trudeau came to India with a convicted murderer, by the way, and tried to meet the then Chief Minister of Punjab. Not only did Captain Amrinder Singh refuse to meet him, but also gave him a list of people who continue to take shelter on the soil of Canada. Clearly, these stern messages have proved to be ineffective for Mr. Trudeau. Where do you see him coming from 2018 to 2023, and do you really think that kind of politics has benefited him?
Padmaja, things are very crucial going on from the last couple of days. Basically, the reason behind it is when Captain Amrinder met Trudeau in 2018, they gave a dossier of the men who are pulling or disturbing the Punjab peace on the name of Khalistan, XYZ, what happening over there. We are currently seeing that all the things. But now, what happening over there? Like Desh Malik saying, the Sikhs are vandalizing the temples, that Khalistani people. Not a single Sikh, I am very clearly Sikh, not a single Sikh can think to vandalize a temple, because our Guru Tegh Bahadur gave shahadat on this to save the Hindu religion. And every Sikh want to be there, and every the same thing, same patronization what happened during the time of British, the same thing happening there in Canada. We have no link with any Khalistani. If you take a referendum or whatever they are saying, even in Canada, their referendum will be failed by the Punjabis and the Sikhs. Nobody voted them. Even in Punjab, even in Canada, they will fight election on this issue and they will totally fail. I am clearly saying on your channel, and this is the only propaganda to only to disturb the peace of Punjab, to make Sikhs picturization as a terrorist in the world. This is the only agenda what Gurpatwant Pannu said on a channel yesterday. He said, I am playing with the agencies of the international agencies like Canada and XYZ. They are funding him in Canada. And that's why he is disturbing the peace of Canada, even in Punjab. That man should be sent behind the bars. We should take this issue. And I am giving my regard to Prime Minister that they had taken a strong decision. But we have to think that many of our people, many of our Punjabis are staying in Canada. They are the Canadian citizens. For them, we have to the norms should be changed. We don't have to take that much of strong decision. We had given our dossier and whatever it be to the Canada, but we have to simplify that thing. This is not the way, because there are many marriages are going on in Canada of the Sikh people, and even for the Punjabis in the coming days. The people have to go from here and they are coming to Punjab. The economy of Punjab and all the things are boosted by these things in Punjab. So we are a little bit, I request the government, little bit the things which are to be happen in the next days.
Ritesh Malik, you know what must be particularly unnerving? It's bad enough to have people like Nijjar at one point running around, now Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, but to have the government openly back such elements and refuse to rein them in, how do you react then as a citizen when your government seems hostile to you as a community?
But you know, unfortunately, what has happened is like what we feel as normal citizens, what we see and observe, like these elements have infiltrated into government, into, you know, bureaucracy everywhere. And, you know, they exercise a clout, and at times, you know, it's like, you know, somebody telling you something again and again and again and again and again. And they also, you know, they give an impression, as I was saying before, that the whole Sikh community is with them. So politicians fall prey to them in, you know, in lieu of, you know, getting votes or trying to get funds or whatnot. I mean, but it's a little weird. We all as Canadians are very, very concerned about these developments, and it's purely appeasement. It's purely appeasement, nothing more than that. End of the day, I know like Canada is a great country. Canada realizes somewhere that, you know, it's wrong. But I think these people, I mean, anything which happens, like you have to see the ecosystem, how it starts to work. I mean, immediately when Prime Minister Trudeau gave that statement, I mean, you need to see how many politicians just started parroting that narrative because they are within the system.
Patrick Brockman, does Justin Trudeau really think that he is backing some great cause of Sikh rights and self-determination, or this is just cynical politics, knowing that he needs the support of one party and he will do anything to keep them on board?
I think that we all need to remember what happened, this week with the House of Commons, commencing its fall sitting. Trudeau being, the lowest point in the polls that he's been since he became Prime Minister. He needed something to grab onto. Canadians are facing the highest housing costs in a generation. A bag of groceries in Canada will, cost 4,500 rupees equivalent. Consumer price index is the highest it's been in a generation. Canadians are struggling in a very significant way, and I don't think India can relate to that because India is leading economic growth on the planet right now with 10% quarterly GPI moves. So it's Indians are they can't relate to what goes on here. Trudeau governs, by identity politics. He seeks to divide in order to conquer, and that's, the game plan. The other thing that we all need to remember is that Trudeau has never really had, other than the first election, he's never had the support of Canadians. He gets elected with maybe 29% of the popular vote, and he has to piece that together with Jagmeet Singh. He wouldn't be Prime Minister unless he had the support of Jagmeet Singh as, to create that coalition government. And so what has Jagmeet Singh ever, said about a Khalistani terrorist? And we know the answer to that. He refuses to condemn terrorism, and therefore Trudeau is going to refuse to condemn terrorism. And so jointly,
You know, as a follow-up, do you find it surprising that hardly any Canadian politician, barring maybe Jagmeet Singh and a couple of others, and of course the foreign minister, have actually supported him on his claims about Indian intelligence being behind the so-called assassination of Nijjar?
It doesn't matter because this will get buried because he's never going to have to produce the details of the investigation. They're going to be locked up like they were. The Air India bombing investigation took $100 million in over a decade, and they didn't release that until trial. And so they're not going to have to release any details of what they found out. Indian agents. What does that actually mean? People are not as dumb in Canada as you might think. And so I think that he scores a huge victory because it puts him in the limelight, and he's a former, part-time drama teacher, and this is what he leans towards. And so he gets his big splash on the international stage on Monday, and then flies down, to New York, to the United Nations, and he's parading in front of the planet on how he's going to, single-handedly, change the world and save the world for, climate change. He probably won't be prime minister for much longer, and he'll go work with Tony Blair, for some leftist, think tank, and is most of his time now is the Canadians are facing these huge problems. He doesn't spend much time in Canada because he's hated. When he goes to a rally anywhere in Canada, he's got people waiting for him, throwing vitriol towards him, and he knows that. So he has to, travel abroad, and he didn't come back from G20 with any trade arrangements. He doesn't come back from any nation that he visits with any formal trade deals. And so he comes back and sits on platitudes. It's a sad situation, unfortunately. And it sounds like, a lot of hot air, but that's really, how Canadians are being governed right now.
Well, he has managed to at least get the trade deal with India put on hold. And also, as an Indian perspective, I find it remarkable that people who talk about India's Hindu nationalist government and polarization don't bat an eyelid before actually doing appeasement politics and appeasing actual terror sympathizers on their own soil. But Professor Dahija, I want to play out for you the reactions of Mr. Trudeau when he actually spoke in the House of Commons and the day after. Listen to this, and do you think that this is him walking back from his original stance a little bit? Let's listen to what he said.
Over the past number of weeks, Canadian security agencies have been actively pursuing credible allegations of a potential link between agents of the government of India and the killing of a Canadian citizen, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Canada has declared its deep concerns to the top intelligence and security officials of the Indian government. Last week at the G20, I brought them personally and directly to Prime Minister Modi in no uncertain terms. Any involvement of a foreign government in the killing of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil is an unacceptable violation of our sovereignty. In the strongest possible terms, I continue to urge the government of India to cooperate with Canada to get to the bottom of this matter. India, the government of India, needs to take this matter with the utmost seriousness. We are doing that. We are not looking to provoke or escalate. We are simply laying out the facts as we understand them, and we want to work with the government of India to lay everything clear.
Has he recalibrated a little bit? Today in the UN, he didn't speak at all when asked questions.
Absolutely. He's had no choice. And there's a very striking comparison. In the first, he was very, very bold, assertive, very schoolmarmish, sort of chastising India. And in the second, he sounded very chastened. Because, guess what? In less than 24 hours, he realized, look, my allies are not supporting me. People aren't buying this. And I'm really got to walk back a bit. But I don't think that's going to work as a strategy. I mean, he's already sort of thrown the dice on this. And he has to either come up with proof, which I don't think he will, or face the consequences. And so really, it's a very bad situation for him and for Canada.
And it's quite a coincidence that even as the standoff over Hardeep Singh Nijjar is showing no signs of abating, what happens in the bang in the middle of this standoff? Another killing of a gangster, Sukhdeep Singh Sukha, who was shot dead in Winnipeg, and this time Lawrence Bishnoi, another gangster, is claiming responsibility. Another Khalistani sympathizer, another case of unknown assailants, and another death of a gangster on Canadian soil. What do you make of all of this? First, take a look at the details of exactly who Sukha was and what happened to him.
पंजाब की असली स्थिति क्या है?
स्थिति तो गंभीर है।
Sukhdeep Singh, alias Sukha Dunke, Khalistan-linked gangster, wanted in India, killed in Canada. Interestingly, Sukha's name was on the list of 43 wanted criminals released by NIA yesterday. He appeared at number 33 on the list of criminals engaged in terror gangster acts against India. Within 24 hours, unknown assailants had shot Sukha in Canada's Winnipeg. Now, Lawrence Bishnoi's gang is claiming the responsibility for his murder. In a Facebook post, he has called it revenge killing for the murders of Gurlal Barar and Vicky Midukhed, who he called our brothers. Significantly, Lawrence Bishnoi is behind bars in Ahmedabad as part of an ongoing NIA inquiry into a drug smuggling case. But he also faces charges as a suspect in the murder case involving Punjabi singer Sidhu Moosewala, another pro-Khalistani voice. The Indian government, however, has pinned the blame on high levels of organized crime in Canada.
I think your question was Sukhdeep. I think, to be fair, this is not a question that's really in our security. It's more of a security thing. All I can say is, we have seen reports in this. Frankly, it seems that if you have so much organized crime, this violence has been there. There's a lot of violence when organized crime has such a large presence. That's all I would like to say on that.
Now, the circumstances of Sukha's murder are eerily similar to that of Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar, for which Canada is blaming India. Sukha was reportedly trying to resurrect the Khalistan Tiger Force following the murder of Nijjar in June. For those observing keenly, there seems to be more to these deaths than meets the eye. Let's join the dots. Over the course of the last few months, enemies of India who sought sanctuary in supposed safe havens like Canada and Pakistan are slowly finding out that their shelters may no longer be secure. Look at the list of most wanted in India who have been gunned down in just the last few months. Just 3 days before Hardeep Singh Nijjar was shot dead in a Gurdwara in Surrey in Canada, Avtar Singh Khanda, a UK-based Khalistani leader, died in a London hospital after suspected poisoning. Last year in Nepal, Lal Muhammad, a suspected ISI operative involved in counterfeit Indian currency, was chased and shot in the outskirts of Kathmandu. Even in Pakistan, the designated hub of global terrorist and anti-India forces, the shadows seem to follow. From LET commander Rayaz Ahmed to Khalistani terrorist Paramjeet Singh Panjwar, to other senior functionaries from Hizbul Mujahideen, Jaish-e-Mohammed and Al-Badr. The terror foot soldiers seeking refuge have been falling left, right and center, all at the hands of unknown assailants. It is a curious case of elements inimical to Indian interests going down like 9 pins. So far, there is only one thing that is conclusively obvious.
It was important to get you the story of this man simply because Preetpal Singh Baliawal, a lot of people think that Gurpatwant Singh Pannu or Nijjar, all of these are people who are working for self-determination or some great Khalistan. There is no Khalistan. There is no Khalistan movement. Just one look at all of these people. They are on the run for the pettiest of crimes that they have committed in India. Essentially, they're just petty thugs masquerading as some great freedom fighters.
Yes, indeed. I think that package makes it very clear that these essentially are gangsters. And Canada, unfortunately, has become a haven or a home, not just for Khalistani gangsters, but gangsters from other diasporas where bad actors, bad apples have come in with otherwise bona fide migrants and citizens. And I must say, broadly, on the law and order question, I live close to Parliament, and where I live, there's a raging homeless and drugs crisis. You see spent syringes. You see people lighting up crack cocaine pipes. There are streets literally within sight of Parliament where I cannot walk because it's unsafe to walk. This is in Canada's capital, a G7 capital. It's extraordinarily disturbing. The authorities don't seem to act, don't seem to care. And the truth is Canada's inner cities, Toronto, Vancouver, are becoming unsafe. It's extraordinary.
So what happens next? Patrick Brockman, is are India and Canada just going to sit here in this state of limbo, withdraw their diplomats? Basically, and I'll just, address the elephant in the room. Most people are wondering whether Canada is going to end up becoming another Pakistan.
I just have to tell you that summary that you did on the murders that have been going around the world was excellent. I didn't know a lot of that, but I'd also like to point out that the killing in 2022 of Gurpatwant Singh Malik, the Air India bomber,
yes,
he was murdered in Surrey, British Columbia, just outside of Vancouver. The person that murdered him was a contract killer who was shortly released after and committed another murder, another contract killing of another gangster in 2023 in the spring, in April or May of this year. And so, I mean, this is the bigger question that I think a lot of us, need to be looking at. Was this, did India send an assassin, or is this just part of the gangland hits that go on all over Canada? From the Vancouver Sun crime reporter, journalist Kim Boland, wrote about this, and that's her opinion at the time when he was killed. And then Terry Glavin from the National Post has written this week 2 excellent articles that people should be reading about this. And so we don't know what information the RCMP has or what Trudeau has, but we do know that this is a pattern in Canada where, it has nothing to do with the Sikh community. You've got these radical Khalistanis who were involved in the drug trade and use that, to fund their operations. So, in terms of the bigger question of what's going to happen, I hold an Indian visa, and I was disappointed to hear that India's canceled. I come to India each year, and that's a sad point for people like me. Is it going to affect Modi? Modi just got another probably 10 points in the polls in India. He'll be reelected. Will Trudeau? No. This gives him a temporary pop in the polls. It's a complete distraction for Canadians to take away their problems that they're facing, but it's not going to help Trudeau in the long term. It'll only serve to embolden the support of people that actually know what's going on.
For anyone who would try and link it to the Modi government in India and say this became worse after the farmers' agitation, or what happened on the 26th of January when there were people on tractors running riot on the streets of New Delhi, they surely cannot be silly enough to forget that the bombing of the Kanishka flight did not happen when Modi was in government. The entire movement, the fleeing of these criminals from Indian soil did not start after 2014. This has been allowed to fester, and if Mr. Trudeau thinks this is where he wants to hang his political fortunes, well then good luck to him. India is clearly having none of it. Thanks very much all gentlemen. After a smooth